Welcome to Man in America, a voice of reason in a world gone mad. I'm your host, Seth Holhouse. If you look around, you see that our world is under attack from all angles, and this is probably nothing new to you if you're watching this show. It's not just the threats of nuclear war or the recent news of the Poseidon missile coming out of Russia that can create 1,000-foot tall tidal waves of radioactive water, but it's also the poisons being dumped onto us, the chemtrails, the toxins, the microplastics, and so much more. And so joining me is one of my favorite guests to have on, who's one of the sponsors of the show, Miss Kim Bright, who is a fascinating woman with a very, very deep understanding of health and the human body, but also a really good understanding of just geopolitics and the bigger picture of what's happening and the depopulation agenda. And so in today's show, we're going to be hitting a bunch of topics, nuclear war, microplastics, Ukraine war, drones, gut health, microbiome, and so much more. So please enjoy the show. And just a quick reminder, if you're watching on Rumble, thank you for supporting a free speech platform. Make sure you leave a thumbs up. Go ahead and hit that thumbs up button. I really appreciate if you do. Hit the thumbs up button, leave me a comment, share if you love to. And that's it. So please enjoy this interview with Kim Bright. Kim Bright, it's always wonderful to have you on the show. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
Well, it's a joy, and thank you for always having me and hosting. It's lovely to be able to talk to someone of similar viewpoints.
It is, especially I think, gosh, I feel like that it's so easy to be on an island these days, and there's just so much crazy stuff happening, and even within, I mean, we were kind of talking about before we started recording here, we were talking about chemtrails, and it's like, okay, so you're against chemtrails, which means you're pro-environment. So does that mean that you're more liberal, or are you conservative because you're kind of like a right-wing conspiracy theorist, or because you're like a green, kind of like save the earth type person? And it just feels like everything is so fragmented. Everything's a whirlwind that it's nice to sit down with somebody that you can just speak openly and be on the same wavelength.
Yes, that's a good word. Yes, it's be on a similar wavelengths. It's nice. It's relaxing, right, Seth?
It is, which is important.
Yeah.
So we've got a lot of different topics that we're going to be hitting today, starting with nuclear threats, and getting into the Ukraine war and plastics and a whole lot more. And one thing that is I know I don't have pulled up for us to talk about, but I wanted to mention in terms of the nuclear threat stuff is that, so Trump has this meeting with Xi Jinping, and almost like simultaneously they're talking about, kind of starting back up nuclear testing again, which I think it hasn't been since like 92 was the last time that we were actually testing nuclear weapons. And so it's just, then getting obviously within to Russia, which we'll be talking about in Poseidon technology, it just feels like, the saying of the rumors of wars, right? That it just feels like there's like the wavelengths are off in the world, and that there's some strange energy, and there's this feeling of like certain things are going really well, but there's also this kind of dark threat outside the door at all times. What's your feeling on that overall?
Yeah, I think, I agree with you. I mean, if you look in the Bible, and, the end chapter is here, it almost feels like sometimes, because the whole thing is the dark side is definitely there. And then we have the light side, the people that are shining light, trying to do the right thing. So I think we definitely are dealing in some very interesting times here, Seth, that where the extremes are showing, and this is what's going on. And I think the leaders are, trying to, say, well, I've got the bigger stick here. And then the other one pulls out their stick and says, well, I've got a bigger one than you do. And this is where we're at. And it's scary. It's very scary, especially these things that Russia's been developing that are, very, very doomsday, if you will, type weaponry, because they are powered by nuclear, warheads, and can create, they've got an underwater nuclear warhead that can generate 1,000-foot tall radioactive tsunami. Now, they can target our coastlines. And then, I know President Trump's trying to put a protector over the top of us a dome, but it's definitely not going to protect us against these underwater nuclear warheads that, can generate this radioactive tsunami that's 1,000 foot tall. And it's scary.
It is. And actually, so I know we have a video to play on this and I'll read the news article, but I wanted to comment on one thing that you said, because I think that it was really important, the words that you chose. You said that the extremes are showing. And I've kind of looked into a lot of different kind of perspectives or philosophies. I've always been fascinated by philosophy and the idea of the yin and the yang, right? The positive and the negative, and looking at what is contained within what the yin and yang is talking about and what's showing just in that symbol itself, or what we call the yin yang, but the Chinese, yin yang, right? And so,
Right.
But what you see though is that when you have the two, the black and the white, when they're kind of rotating, you go through the periods as it rotates. It goes from being kind of black, very dominant, and then and the white starts becoming more dominant, and the white becomes dominant, and it's a cycle. It's a cycle of where you have the balance continually playing it out. But as you get to the extreme, it then reverses and it goes back the other way.
It turns into its opposite. Exactly.
Exactly.
That's macrobiotics. That's what you teach. When you reach those extremes, it turns into its opposite. Yeah.
Exactly. And so, but I also think that what we see with that is that when things aren't at the extremes, they're not as visible, right? So if you look at our country as an example, you look at the divisions or just the things that were happening in say like 30 years ago, there might be the left versus right. It might be over some, I think, much more silly issue, right? In kind of comparison to what's happening right now. Whereas maybe they, a long time ago, they want to have gay marriage, right? And it's like, okay, you could say, what is the level of extreme? That's not that extreme, right? Compared to, say, mutilating children, state sanctioned, mutilation of children. You can see that that's just one example, but there's so many areas where it's like there's no more in the middle anymore. Everything is getting pulled to either one side or the other, and it's becoming very clear which side everything is on. It's almost like it's like the wheat is being separated from the chaff, right? It's like there's this separation happening, and you can no longer just be kind of quiet and sitting in the middle.
Well, and the way that I look at it too is like water dripping on a rock. If you watch water dripping on a rock, you don't know that it's eroding, but you come back 100 years later and they've done everything in increments. So they're normalizing things in increments, small little increments. Like you just said, okay, gay marriage, let's get that normalized. Then we're going to normalize, something else. And then pretty soon we're going to normalize mutilating children. And pedophilia and all that is going to be normalized.
Have you heard of the bearskin hoodie? Well, the smart people are locking in their winter gear now because this is hands down the best time to prep for the coming winter. So Bearskin's running a 60% off deal right now, but that's only if you get your hoodie earlier. This hoodie is built like a tank. 340 GSM microfleece, 10 pockets with a clean, rugged look. This looks awesome. Plus, it zips right into the heavy storm rain jacket to become 100% waterproof when you need it. So when it turns cold, wet, windy, you're not scrambling last minute. You'll get free US shipping, fast delivery, and you've locked in your winter gear already. That's a win-win. So do yourself a favor. Text the word Seth to 36912 to lock in your 60% off. Again, text Seth, S-E-T-H, to 36912. You'll get a link sent straight to your phone so you can check it out later if you're busy right now. And one more thing, when you support Bearskin, you're also supporting the Fallen Outdoors and the Hope for the Warriors Veterans programs. So you're not just buying great gear, you're backing a cause that matters. So don't wait till you're freezing to realize that your hoodie sucks. Get a Bearskin now while it's 60% off. Text Seth to 36912.
We've been dripped on for all these years, and people now, each new generation thinks that's normal. What they're dealing with, but it wasn't normal 20 years ago, 30 years ago. And so we have to fight this. We really have to get back into a balance. This is not good where we're at with the extremes.
Exactly. So jumping back into the Poseidon technology, I'll do a quick kind of read a little bit of this article here. It's on Euro News. And then we have a short video as well. So it says Moscow, this is just in the past week or so. It says Moscow says it tested the Poseidon nuclear underwater drone, another nuclear super weapon. So this is 3 days after, this is the 29th of last month. 3 days after announcing a test of the nuclear-powered Burshnik missile, Moscow said on Wednesday it also tested Poseidon, a nuclear-capable underwater drone. The second nuclear weapon test in just a week comes as the talks with the U.S. stalled over Moscow's reluctance to cease fire in Ukraine. And so, describing this weapon, it says, describing it as a new weapon, quote, which cannot be intercepted, says that Putin says the drone has already been dubbed a doomsday machine. And so it says, speaking at a Moscow hospital where he met with soldiers wounded in Russia's war against Ukraine, Putin said the Poseidon drone was tried while running on nuclear power for the first time on Tuesday. He described it as having unmatched in speed and depth. And so, as you mentioned before, basically, actually here I'll read their description. This is pretty kind of chilling. What it does, it says the Kremlin-affiliated media outlets claim the Poseidon is designed to travel at up to 200 kilometers per hour. This is underwater. Known in NATO as Canyon, and formally labeled Status 6 by Moscow. The drone is 20 meters long, 1.8 meters in diameter, and weighs about 100 tons. So they claim that with the nuclear power giving it unlimited range, the drone's speed and depth make it hard to locate. And so they said that basically, so Russian media reported that the Poseidon was designed to explode near coastlines and unleash a powerful radioactive tsunami. So as far as I understand, you imagine like a drone, kind of like a remotely operated drone submarine, right? That's carrying a nuclear payload that, say they wanted to take out Washington, D.C., they could just drive this thing at 200 kilometers per mile underwater, which is incredibly fast, detonate it off the coast of, Virginia and that, that overall area, Maryland, and create a massive radioactive tsunami. And it's like, well, like, how do the Iron Dome or the Golden Dome or whatever domes that we're building for air defense can't even touch this?
No. So it's scary. And again, we are at the extreme ends. This is really proving that. And I don't know, prayer, everybody pray. That's what I say.
Exactly. So I've got a clip I'm going to play here real quick on this. Let's go and let's watch this quick clip.
Just yesterday, there was another test of a future weapons system, and that's an unmanned submarine, Poseidon unmanned submarine, with a nuclear power plant. So for the first time, we managed not only to launch it from a carrier submarine, but to start its nuclear power plant, which powered this vessel, underwater vessel, for a certain period of time. This is a huge breakthrough as well.
Which again, it kind of takes you into that thinking of, well, I guess for one thing I'm thinking is, like, I think most Americans have no idea how unprepared they are, but things are heating up. And what are your thoughts on this?
I agree. Things are heating up, and people need to understand that things are heating up, and they need to prepare, in any way possible. But we're talking about things that literally could wipe out cities that I don't know if we have any things that can protect us against what they've developed over there. I mean, and it's interesting because Poseidon has gone above and beyond what their other super weapon was that they called Satan 2, which I found very interesting name. So it is like Revelation. I mean, we are living in days of Revelation, I think, and there's so many scary things that are coming out with this war in Ukraine, with Russia, with China. But, I don't think that people are realizing also we've got to concentrate on our long-term health effects that we're experiencing on a global level. Because yes, all these things are there. There's possibilities, but we have to really concentrate and pay attention. And I think otherwise we go crazy. We need to really still live each day and look to the future and not get caught up in, oh, we're going to die tomorrow. I think we need to protect ourselves and our families' health. And, this war in Ukraine is so terrible because they're using 80% of what they're using to kill and cause chaos and havoc over there are drones. These drones are connected to fiber optic cables that they use one time. Then they are abandoned in the field, Seth, and they leach into the soil. And it takes over 600 years for these chemicals to come out of the soil. The toxic aftermath is having significant global impact on our health. If you think about it, every time fuel is burned, a missile launched, a bomb detonated, the microplastics are released into the atmosphere. They're affecting us. They're spread throughout the entire upper atmosphere, spread globally, affecting us all. We're inhaling the microplastics. And the whole thing too with those things that they're using, the fiber optic cables, those are up to 25 miles long. That's the length of a marathon. And they're just leaving them in the ground. And then bats and mammals and all kinds of animals are getting caught up in this. So it's not just humans that are being affected with what they're doing with this craziness. It's all life. And, and then we look at the microplastics, how they've spread throughout the world in tap water, bottled water worldwide. 94% contain microplastics now. 88% of our protein sources, that includes things like tofu, our meat, seafood, poultry. So we are now dealing with all of this stuff, the outside things that we can't, control, but the inside things we can control. And microplastics in our blood, this is unbelievable. How it's, appearing, because if you have microplastic plaque where these blood clots are made and they're containing the little microplastic, nanoplastic, and these are in your arteries and veins, you're 4.5 times more likely to die from a heart attack or stroke. So, we're now consuming things and we're ingesting 6 times more microplastics than we did in 1990. And trust me, everybody's got microplastics in their arteries now. And they really devastate us. I don't know if you know this, Seth, but they actually devastate our bones too, because in our muscle mass, they get inside and the stem cells are disrupted in our bone marrow. And now the stem cells can't replenish the bone marrow. They are now weakening our bones, our bone density. They're making us weak and brittle.
Yeah, and so this is something that we've done. We did a show on microplastics before, which was actually it was mind blowing to me. If I remember correctly, one of the stats that came out of the research that we were talking about was that the average person has roughly the equivalent of a plastic spoon's worth of microplastic in their brain alone, which was, so I've got like a Sharpie marker sitting here, and which is, maybe a similar amount of plastic that's in a spoon. To think that there's this much plastic inside of our brains is wild. But there's also, so here's the article I pulled up here talking about how the microplastics could be weakening your bones. It says the review of more than 60 scientific articles show that microplastics, among other effects, can stimulate the formation of osteoclast cells specialized in degrading bone tissue. But then also, I'll pull up that video because you mentioned, so we've got a video here about the microplastics in blood, which I'll play this. This is about 33 seconds long. And this is a whole other thing. Not to be kind of a fearmonger, but this is just the reality of the world that we're living in. So I'll play this real quickly.
White ones, we've got clear ones.
Tons of microplastics wash ashore all over the world every day. And now for the first time, scientists in the Netherlands have detected microplastic pollution in human blood.
All the microplastics and nanoplastics we are exposed to, we inhale and we ingest, that actually, there's so much plastic that it can even enter our bloodstream.
The Dutch study on blood samples from healthy adults detected tiny plastic particles in 80% of people.
Which again, it's just wild that, it's kind of sad because again, we were talking earlier before about, chemtrails and how I'm noticing a lot less chemtrails now that the government shut down. And you're in Florida, and you're lucky, and with DeSantis being such a champion of trying to end geoengineering there, and you're seeing blue skies again. But it's just crazy though, because I think that what's happened is that we had this whole, the Green New Deal and this push for environmentalism, which I think in a lot of ways was hijacked and controlled by the UN and a lot of the globalist organizations as kind of a Trojan horse for, really kind of global communism under the guise of saving the planet. But it's also, there's a lot of truth in that too, because the plastics and all the pollution, it's destroying us. I mean, it's at a cellular level now. It's in our blood, it's in our brains. And so it makes me just think, gosh, what have we done to our world? And how can we fix this world? Right? It's kind of I'm not Debbie Downer, but these are some serious issues though.
Yeah, I hate to be Debbie Downer, but we have to confront. We can't be ostriches forever. And so many people, it's so hard for them to confront the amount of evil that was here even 30, 40 years ago. Well, it's now, gone up a million times over. So we have to bring up our ability to confront this evil, because even now, all these things are affecting our ability to reproduce. And in men, there's studies that show that the sperm counts and testosterone counts are lower than ever before. I mean, young men now have 50% less testosterone, less sperm count than a 65-year-old man. That is scary, because here's the deal. If we're not reproducing, what happens to us? You have to be having at least 2.2 children per female in the United States to keep the population at what we're at. And we're now down to 1.8, I think, or 1.4 per female. It's affecting the reproductive systems in men, but it's also affecting, microplastics affect women as well. I mean, they're, in the clothes they're wearing, the food, everything is affecting everyone. So we have a massive problem here. And also microplastics too, Seth, are altering our DNA. They're changing our gene expression. They're causing the DNA damage. They're interfering with DNA repair mechanisms. And this is concerning, because when you alter the DNA, now you've got cancer. You've got, all these other diseases that we're looking at. And microplastics, they've been shown to cross the blood-brain barrier. And again, we've got dementia, we've got Alzheimer's, we've got all these things going on. So, having that spoon of microplastics in your brain is really causing havoc. And people think, well, what can I do if I just eliminate and don't use plastic things? Limiting it or avoiding it is not going to be enough. We've been inundated with it for so long. We've got to take active steps to actually do things that are going to remove these toxins out of the body before they do irreversible damage to us. And of course, BPA is the most toxic chemical in plastic, and it's degraded. Thank goodness I found this study, and I got so excited, Seth, because we can actually do something about the most dangerous toxic chemical in plastic to get it out of our body. And it's called Bacillus pumilus. This is found in kimchi. It's a strain of bacteria found in kimchi. And it actually has been isolated from kimchi, and it actually works, because we're dealing with all of these heart disease, cancer, erectile dysfunction, fetal abnormalities, all these things. And this is exciting good news instead of all this bad news, that there's something that we can do about it to eliminate these things. And it's called Bacillus pumilus. And it can it can degrade this plastic out of our system. And then another study, 2025 study, Seth, there were 2 other lactobacillus strains that showed up that were found in kimchi. And they actually absorb and pull into their biofilms, these microplastics and nanoplastics, and then they help the body excrete them. And this is Bacillus paracasei and Bacillus plantarum. This was exciting too, because now we have 3 things found in kimchi that can help us get rid of this and avoid the toxicity and maintain, the gut microbiome, the optimal health of the gut microbiome, because the gut microbiome affects everything in our body.
Exactly. And so I want to jump real quick. So I know I have a video that I want to play about the brain, but then also I want to then make a comment on the testosterone and imbalances, and then we'll come back to different things we can use to kind of help combat this. So I've got a video here. Let me pull this up real quickly. This is, let's see, where can I find, okay, microplastics in the brain. Okay, so let's take a look at this real quick. And this is about about a minute long.
And we start with a new study on the impact of microplastics, which found human brains contained as much plastic as a plastic spoon, which is up 50% from 2016.
What we're finding is in the brains of people who have dementia, there's actually higher amounts of microplastics. So essentially, these microplastics, or these tiny little particles of plastics, are crossing the blood-brain barrier, and they're depositing into our brain. And they're being correlated with increased risk of neurodegenerative diseases like dementia, possibly linked to autism and other things that affect the brain. There's also evidence showing increased risk of stroke, and increased inflammation overall. So I have always said, listen, there's no way to avoid microplastics entirely unless you're going to live in a bubble. And by the way, that bubble couldn't be a plastic bubble. It'd have to be a glass bubble.
So as she's saying, you've got microplastics surging up 50%, right? I think in the brain in the last 8 years. And so this is one thing, but then I wanted to hit on, you mentioned the testosterone and the hormones and how the sperm counts are being affected, but even the lower testosterone, because I was talking to someone else recently about this. And, when you look at all these different things that are happening, right? Take microplastics as an example. They know what these microplastics do, right? Like as we talked about in a previous show, there's so many studies. I think there's a study from probably 20 years ago where they'd put polyester synthetic clothing on dogs. And they saw that the dogs that were wearing these polyester underwear had a direct drop in sperm count. And that was just one of so many countless studies. And so you have to ask yourself, it's like, okay, the people that are producing and marketing and selling this stuff to people en masse, it's like either they're ignorant of this, which is highly, like I very much so doubt that, or they're doing it on purpose. And if you look at the bigger picture, as we've talked about before, and the overall idea of if they're trying to drive us into some sort of global depopulation, which it's hard to ignore that these days, that this is actually happening. We're seeing the life expectancy declining for the first time in a long time. We're seeing fertility rates plummet. We're seeing, as you mentioned, the births per person, right? They're dropping from like that that healthy 2.2 plus rate to below that.
Yeah. There's facts now. It's not just conjecture. It's not just some theory, wild theory out there, conspiracy theory. It's actual fact.
It is. I'm creeping up on 40 now, and let me tell you, my body is feeling it. Between chasing my 2 little girls around, getting climbed on like a jungle gym, and constantly being on dad duty, my back and knees are basically begging for a break by the end of the day. I used to bounce back faster after a workout or a long day outside, but now, not so much. That's why I'm excited to share something that's really made a difference for me, Qualia Senolytic. It's a first-of-its-kind formula designed to help your body naturally eliminate senescent cells. Basically, these are zombie cells that hang around long after they're useful and just clutter things up, making you feel stiff, tired, and old. So here's the deal. These zombie cells can seriously drag down your energy, slow your recovery, and make your joints ache. But Qualia Senolytic is packed with 9 plant-based vegan compounds that are clinically tested to clear out those zombie cells, helping you feel years younger. And the best part is that you only take it 2 days a month. So literally just twice a month you take it. So I've been using it for a few months now, and honestly, it's been a game changer. My soreness is way down, my recovery is faster, and I've got more energy to keep up with my little girls. So if you want to experience the science of feeling younger, go to qualialife.com/Seth for up to 50% off your purchase and use the promo code Seth for an additional 15% off. That's qualialife.com. That's QUALIA life.com/Seth for an additional 15% off your purchase. And folks, your older self will thank you. And a big thanks today for Qualia for sponsoring my show today. And if you look at that, it's like, okay, you see that aspect of it, which is showing that, yes, like our population it's under attack. But then the other thing, which I think is I think it's hard to say what's equally or more or less sinister. If you look at the role of testosterone in men and you look at what men have become now, my wife and I, we love historical drama. And there's probably my favorite all-time show is this show called The Last Kingdom. And it's kind of going into the Saxon and Dane battles of the 900 AD. And you look at the men at that time. Now, obviously, they're portrayed on screen, but it's probably close to how they were. They're warriors. And these are people that will go fight to the death to protect their family, to save the kingdom, to kind of fulfill their destiny as someone that is called to war. But the men there's no way they'd put up with what we're putting up with. And I think that it's such a contrast. You pluck someone out, even from 50, 60 years ago, these young men being sent off the war, you put them next to your average, say, 20-year-old man these days that's, playing a bunch of video games in their mom's basements. They're scared of the world. They've got trigger problems of, anxiety. Not all of them, right? But a lot of the kind of the modern men that we as a race that men have become so weakened. And the
Feminized.
testosterone,
Exactly. It's like the yin and yang again. They're turning into the opposite. Men are becoming feminine and women are becoming masculine. And it's all about that. And then pretty soon it's just going to be one blob of, I don't know, nobody can reproduce. And it's just all, I don't know, it's crazy.
It is. And it's like, well, like, where are the men, right? Because that's the thing, is that they're the ones that should be standing up and protecting their families and fighting for what's right, but they just become so pacified, right? They've become just so weakened. And I do think that there's a resurgence of people trying to get back to living how they should. And there's, I think there's a lot of men that are trying to be men again. There's different movements about that. And also, from the same side with the females, there's like the whole trad wife thing that's happening of women that are saying, you know what, like I actually want to stay home and just bake bread and raise kids and be, barefoot pregnant in the kitchen. Right. So I think that we're seeing some things that are returning, but I think we look at it from the bigger picture, you can see there's definitely been this very, very, very well planned and well executed agenda to reverse the gender roles, to kind of neuter the men, to turn the women into tyrants, and to create the society that is just ripe for being overtaken.
Exactly. And those are all outside influences. So what you're saying, I completely agree with, because we have to pay attention to our insides, take care of our gut microbiome. We have to pay attention to our soil, pay attention to the microbiome in the soil. And we have to grow healthier food. We have to the woman has to pay attention to feed her family the things that are going to heal the body with this onslaught of all of this outside forces that have been just poured all over us. And the man, she has to nourish the man with yang type foods that are going to strengthen him and make him be the man that God intended him to be. And so, this is very important, these roles. And God made male and female for those reasons. And we've got to get back to that. And this whole thing of the technology and like you said, the guys in the basement, and they're becoming very feminine and they just want to sit around and be lazy all day playing video games. And the women are, out there, being the men. We've got to reverse it. We've got to. And, the whole, again, I go back to your health starts in the gut. Your health starts with a healthy microbiome. Your sickness starts when your microbiome's sick, when it's overpopulated with all the bad guys. And it's the same thing with the soil, with the food that we're growing in. And the gut microbiome is going to affect our skin, our hair, our heart, our brain, every every place in our body. I mean, we have naturally a gut heart axis. We have a gut kidney axis, a gut lung axis, a gut liver axis, a gut brain axis, a gut bladder axis, gut pancreas, muscle, reproductive, skin, and bone axis. The gut is connected everywhere in our body to every single organ. And if we don't take care of that microbiome, for instance, gut-brain axis, people have brain fog these days. Why? We deserve mental clarity. But if you have a sick microbiome, if you have an overpopulation of the viruses and the bad bacteria and the parasites in your gut and candida and all this, you are going to have foggy brain because of that gut-brain axis. You need to make your gut microbiome healthy to have mental clarity, because it is biodirectional. So as it goes in the gut, it goes in the brain. So as it goes in the brain, it goes in the gut. And do you know that a healthy microbiome is going to reduce inflammation? It's going to make sure that gut barrier is healthy so you don't have leaky gut. It's going to then help you improve your mood and your cognition abilities. People that are depressed, they have a dirty, imbalanced gut, probably leaky gut. And people that have anxiety, you make neurotransmitters in your gut. If your gut isn't healthy, serotonin can't be made. 80% of our serotonin is manufactured in our gut. And so this is key, a key neurotransmitter for our mood. And so this is very, very important. And, the serotonin, again, emotional regulation, people that have mood swings, they need to make sure that their gut is in balance. Inflammation regulation. Inflammation causes all kinds of problems in the body. And when we're under stress, we're producing so much cortisol levels, high cortisol levels 24/7, which in turn turns around more inflammation. And so when you get your microbiome healthy and the good guys are in a higher ratio to the bad guys, that inflammation goes down. So this is very important because when you have an inflamed gut, you have an inflamed brain. And so this is negatively impacting the brain. And then the stress system, as I said, is on 24/7 with the cortisol pumping out constantly, and you're on red alert. You constantly feel like you're on red alert and you can't win and you're fighting. If your gut's out of balance, that's how you're going to feel. So it's so important to reduce that stress activity, to heal the gut microbiome, put it in balance, and also gut heart health. There's a study that came out that shows this direct correlation to the health of our microbiome is to the health of our heart. And this actually study showed that you can lower triglycerides, blood glucose, very important for people that have type 2 diabetes. Your blood pressure, both this blood pressures are lowered. So this is very, very important. And it comes from kimchi, that centuries old, incredible king of fermented foods. This study came out that we can actually help this. And, when heart disease, we know, is the #1 killer, and it also contributes to obesity. And there was another study that came out, we can protect against obesity because kimchi in our diets, it shows reduce the body fat by 31.8%. So there are things that we can do, very simple things, to really balance out our gut microbiome and keep it healthy.
Well, one thing that is super interesting is that here's an article I want to kind of pull attention to. It says the role of gut health in testosterone production. Because as you're talking there, you're talking about these things and how the gut correlates to everything. So I'm thinking, okay, the gut's got to correlate to our hormone production. And I just did a quick search, and this is one of the first things I came across. And it says, and I'll read a little bit of this because we're talking about increasing testosterone. This is something I've been focused really heavily on probably for the past 6 or 8 months or so, looking at, okay, how can I naturally increase my testosterone, through things of how I'm dieting, doing heavy compound lifts in the gym, which is one of the big ones. If you're a guy and you go out and you could pick up big logs for an hour every day, you're going to jack up your testosterone. It's just how the body works. But this is interesting because actually, I'll do a quick read of some of this article. It says the role of gut health and testosterone production. It says, we usually think of testosterone as something that lives in the realm of muscles, masculinity in the bedroom. But what if you're told that your gut, yes, your digestive system might be playing a major role in how much testosterone your body produces? It's not the most obvious connection, but the relationship between gut health and hormone levels is real, and it's more important than most men realize. So it says, so at this place that they focus on testosterone stuff, which actually is a booming business, right? There's so many men now that are now aware of, hey, what are your T levels and everything? But there's a huge business. But I'm surprised to find, because like most places are not telling you to go improve your gut health. They're saying, hey, take this oral cream, this topical cream, or here's a syringe or whatever. But they say that so it says when people talk about gut health, they're usually referring to the state of your gastrointestinal tract, including your stomach, intestines, and trillions of bacteria, collectively known as the gut microbiome, that live there. This ecosystem of bacteria is responsible for far more than just breaking down food. It helps regulate immune function, inflammation, mental health, and yes, hormone production. Think of your gut as the control center for many of your body's systems. When your gut is in good shape, everything from digestion to mood tends to function more smoothly. But when it's off, due to poor diet, stress, medications, or infections, it can throw your whole body out of balance, including your hormonal system. And so it gets into how gut health influences testosterone. This is exactly what you're just talking about, right? Inflammation, hormonal disruption, the gut bacteria and hormone signaling, talking about how your gut microbiome communicates with your endocrine system, which regulates your hormones. So again, it says, when your gut flora is balanced and healthy, these hormonal signals can function properly. But when harmful bacteria outnumber the good, as you've talked about, when the bad guys are too many and the good guys aren't strong enough, it says it can disrupt the signaling network. And so one thing I want to do, kind of touch on here, you mentioned the axis, right? So here it refers to stress, the gut-brain axis, and testosterone. So it says the gut is closely linked to your brain via the gut-brain axis, a communication network between your digestive tract and central nervous system. When you're under chronic stress, your body produces more cortisol, the stress hormone. High levels of cortisol are known to suppress testosterone production. Here's where the gut comes in. Poor gut health can increase your stress response and make it harder for your body to return to a calm, balanced state. If your gut is out of sync, your brain might be in a state of constant alert, keeping cortisol levels elevated and testosterone levels low. And actually, here's one last thing, which I think is actually worth mentioning, because this is really helpful. So it says signs your gut might be hurting your hormones. So it says, not sure if your gut's part of the problem. Here are some signs that your digestive system could be interfering with your hormonal health. Frequent bloating, gas, or stomach discomfort, irregular bowel movements, constipation or diarrhea, food sensitivities or unexplained fatigue after eating, persistent fatigue, low sex drive, mental fog, and a diet heavy in processed food, sugar, or alcohol. I mean, so I feel like I'm just kind of rereading what you just have been kind of nailing on, but it's just crazy to think of, it's not just brain health, you mentioned heart health, but even testosterone. There's all these guys trying to increase their testosterone, but who would think that you can actually increase your testosterone by eating fermented cabbage? I mean, it's wild, but it makes total sense. You go back to what the ancients have always done.
Yep. It's so simple. Sometimes the most profound answers are found in simplicity. And, the whole thing is, think about it. When it's kind of like, if you think about a swamp, what is a swamp there for? A swamp, just has all kinds of gurgling, bubbling, things that are just, consuming things to return it back into the earth. And that's what happens in our gut. We've got the gurgling, bubbling, like you were saying, the bloating, the gas, all of this. We're not meant to be a swamp in there. That's where the viruses have taken over, the bad bacteria have taken over, the parasites are in there, and it's very unhealthy. And think about it, if your gut is so unhealthy with all of these bad microbes, it's going to affect every other tissue in your body, every organ. And so when it's cleared out and clean, like a beautiful, pond that is just completely clear, a fresh spring, think of that. then you're going to have clear thinking. Your heart's going to operate right. Your blood glucose is going to be in balance. You're going to be able to make the reproductive hormones you need, whether you're man or woman. Things are going to be in balance. Again, it goes back to that yin and yang. It goes back to, we're at the extremes. We need to come back in, and we need to take actions and do things that are going to bring us back into a balance.
And so one thing also, and you touched on this, but I want to come back to it again really quickly, is because we talked a lot about microplastics and how they throw everything off. Not just a lot of the blood clotting that we're seeing nowadays. I think that some of them are caused by medications and kind of safe and effective treatments that we've been offered the past couple of years. However, I do think a lot of it also is just the accumulation of microplastics. But it's wild that, again, this PubMed article that we touched on briefly, how kimchi literally, so that basically kimchi cleans out BPA, like in essence, as far as I understand, which is wild to think that these microplastics were so hard for us to get out of our body. And if you told someone that kimchi can clean out microplastics from your BPA microplastics from your body, it almost sounds like science fiction. But it's just crazy, though, that, again, you go back to what the ancients have done. I'm not sure how long they've been fermenting fermenting cabbage over in Asia. What is
2
it?
centuries. 2 centuries.
Exactly. Right. Nothing new under the sun. And so, we return to what our ancestors did. And it's just, you have these magical healing powers. So walk us through a little bit more about what this is telling us with how kimchi can actually pull out the BPA microplastics.
Well, isn't it amazing how they had an innate knowledge of how to prepare foods and that they were healthy for them? And I just find that fascinating, that they were so much more balanced and they just knew. They had a knowingness. But this study shows that the BPA, if it's in the soil, it's like almost a forever chemical. And it doesn't degrade when you use high heat. In fact, it makes it more stable and it makes it stronger. There's nothing that we know of that can degrade this faster except kimchi. And it actually goes in there and actually degrades the plastic in our gut, in our bloodstream. And then, of course, what I said with the other study that came out in 2025 with the Bacillus parkasii and the Bacillus plantarum, those two actually have their biofilms that the electronics that are around the biofilm somehow suck in these microplastics and nanoplastics and adhere. And so then these particular bacteria absorb these plastics, and then they are helping excrete them out through our bowel movements. And I find that fascinating, that food is this powerful, that God gave us these foods that can eliminate modern man's craziness, and that we can get back in a better balance. And that when we do this, it's affecting our entire body.
So something that's interesting is that you mentioned, going back and tapping into ancient knowledge. And I think that the animal system also is very aware of these things. You've probably seen these studies. They'll put out a organic corn on the cob, or a piece of corn, and a GMO one, and they'll set them out, and the squirrels will only eat the organic one. Yep. Or they'll leave out, McDonald's or just garbage food, and even the animals won't eat it. Well, this is kind of a funny story is that, so we have chickens. We've probably got 25 chickens or so. And in our big chicken yard, I built a big kind of compost. It's a big old compost bin. And what we do is every day or so, we have these buckets that are mounted in the wall in the kitchen, which all of our food scraps go into. Or if there's food in the fridge that goes bad, we'll just dump it into the compost buckets, and I'll take them out and go dump them in there. And the chickens, they love it because they'll peck through everything. And whether it's, sourdough starter that's, kind of discarded or whatever it is. But the other day I went out there and I had like 3 big buckets of compost and, old rice and some old bread and, things that the chickens typically love. But in one of the buckets, we had some old kimchi in the back of the fridge that had gone like overly soft, and it was past its kind of time of being nice and crunchy and lovely. And So that kimchi was in the bucket. So I dumped all this compost into the pile. And a lot of times I'll sit there and watch. I say, okay, I'm curious what the chickens are actually eating. The chickens all went straight for the kimchi. And they were like fighting over the kimchi, even though there was bread. And some of the smaller, younger ones, they're left with the bread or the corn or whatever it was. But the chickens went straight for the kimchi. I thought that's really strange, but it makes sense though. It's like even they know what we should be eating. It was a very interesting experience. I thought of you when I was doing that too. I thought, I'll have to tell Kim Bright about this.
That's wonderful. I love stories like that. But yeah, the animals can teach us so much. They still have innate knowledge. And we're losing it. We've lost it. And, humans are eating ultra processed foods and sugary foods and all of these things that don't belong in our body. And then everybody's sick and everybody's going to get pharmaceuticals and surgeries and everything else. And watch your chickens, people, especially if they're organic. I mean, I don't know about the farm-raised chickens in these big mega farms. I don't think they would have that innate ability, but maybe it's just in their DNA. Maybe they would. That would be a good experiment, right? Take some of the chickens that are raised by these big corporations and see if they still have that innate knowledge. That would be an interesting experiment.
It would be. And our chickens are, and we hatched, no, actually we got them all as little baby chicks, 2-year-old chicks or so, or sorry, 2-day-old chicks. So that, they're kind of born and bred in the wild basically. So I would trust their instincts. But one other thing I wanted to pull up with just a quick, a little graph that right here, right? This is something I think that we talked about, the different axes, right? And so this is showing the tangled tale of the gut microbiota imbalance. And so am I correct in understanding when it says gut heart axis, gut lung axis, is that basically it's showing us these are all the different, the gut communicates with all of these different systems.
Correct.
Okay. So walk me through this a little bit.
Okay. Well, you can see this whole chart on how there are communication lines to every single organ in our body. And you can see that when, for instance, the heart has arteriosclerosis, cardiovascular diseases, hypertension, thrombotic events, this is based on a sick gut microbiome, because it's been proven that when your gut is that out of balance, it is affecting and causing the disease. And the same thing with your lung. When you have things like COPD, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, it all ties back to your gut health. If you take care of that gut, you are going to see an improvement in anything that you're seeing on this chart. Liver inflammation, non-alcoholic fatty liver, endocrine axis. Again, this goes back to the sperm count, hormones, behavioral disorders, even on your skin. Kimchi has so many studies showing that when you eat kimchi, your hair starts to grow back. It gets thicker. Your skin changes. If you've had eruptions, for instance, people that have all kinds of skin diseases, these things start to change because it is reflecting the inner gut is reflected on the outside of the skin because of this access, this biodirectional communication line that is naturally there. So you'll see wrinkles going away. You'll see acne, psoriasis, all these things changing on your skin because your skin is screaming to you that you're out of balance, that your gut is out of balance, and it's trying to show you on the outside of your skin. And when you change up that gut microbiome and you've got all the friendly guys just prolificating down there, and kimchi has over 900 unique probiotics in it, you're going to have a happy skin. And skin is our largest organ in our body.
And so basically, just to kind of make sure I understand correctly, because we talked about how kimchi can help remove, say, BPA microplastics, and it's good for the heart. Now, and looking at this chart right here, actually, and so all these different conditions that are tied directly to the gut. So, I'm going to simplify it, but I'll make sure that I understand it properly. That our gut has a bunch of bacteria in it, and there's good bacteria and there's bad bacteria. And a lot of what we've done in our lives, processed food, antibiotics, toxins, etc., those are different things, external influences on our body that have killed off a lot of our good bacteria and allowed the bad bacteria to multiply and flourish. And so if someone has an unhealthy gut, what it really means in a very simplistic way is that they have more bad bacteria than good bacteria. And so the good bacteria is kind of losing its war against the bad bacteria. And so kimchi is much the kind of a strange phenomenon that kimchi, this fermented cabbage from Asia, that for whatever reason, I think it's just, this is God's hand in things, that kimchi has, it's kind of like you're at war, and you have the two people fighting on the ground and the one side's losing, and you have these big planes coming overhead and dropping like 10,000 troops in the sky from parachutes with flamethrowers, and like you win the war, right? So is that kind of like kimchi is just this big old B-52 bomber coming in and just decimating the bad bacteria because it's bringing in all the good bacteria? Is that kind of like my 10-year-old kind of way of understanding it?
Well, yeah, I like to call kimchi our special forces. Like, the Navy has its SEALs and, because the other guys are fighting, they're not winning the war, but then you bring in the special forces. I think kimchi's like the special forces, but your analogy works too. No, we also, don't forget, we have viruses in our gut, we have parasites, and we have fungus, all kinds of fungus, overgrowth. And that's why it's so important, because when these things get out of hand, the reflection of them getting out of hand and growing crazy are all these diseases. And if you look at the soil microbiome where our plants are growing, when you grow in good composted soil that has a rich, diverse, and diversity is key in our microbiome and also in our soil. When that soil is rich in microbes, when it has that diversity there, you can grow organic vegetables and fruits, and the bugs don't bother it because the soil's strong. It's passing on the good microbes to the plants. And so they're able to have these good defense systems. Because remember, 70 to 80% of our immune system is in our gut. It's the same thing with plants. So when you nourish the plant with good soil, you are producing a plant that is going to help defend you by eating it. And so it's so important to balance the microbiome in the soil. Why do you think when they started pouring pesticides and herbicides and all of this junk on our soil and our plants, and then they had to come in and they had to start spraying so many sprays, and then they wanted to make the GMOs, build those into the seeds because they needed to strengthen the plant? That is the exact opposite of what we should be doing. It is the exact opposite. Why did they do that, Seth? They did it for money. They did it for greed. They did it to depopulate. This is my opinion. I stand by it, though, in my heart, because all of these people are making tons of money off of our losing our health and the big corporations. This is what it's been about. And all it goes back to is the simplicity of strengthen your soil, you strengthen the plant. You eat the plant, you strengthen your gut. You eat that kimchi made from organic cabbage, and it's strong, and then you ferment it and it promotes all those good bacteria that are appearing. It goes in, it's a special forces or that B-52 bomber, as you said, and it destroys the fungus, and it destroys the candida fungus, it destroys the parasites, it destroys the bad bacteria and the viruses. And that's it. That is the simplicity. And a lot of times people have a hard time understanding simplicity because we've been so indoctrinated with complexities, especially in Western medicine. They've separated out everything. Everything is specialized now. If we get back and look at the whole, if we get back and we look at the soil as a whole and what it needs to flourish, what our gut needs to flourish, there's so many health benefits to kimchi, but you have to consume it every single day to fight off all of the bad guys that are populating just about everybody's gut. And that's why I wanted to create Kimchi One. That's why we created Kimchi One, because people will not eat kimchi on a daily basis, most Americans. They don't want to make it. They don't want to find it. They don't like the taste of it. It's high in sodium. So people that are on sodium-free diets can't eat that. So we've taken almost all the sodium out. We put it in a capsule so it's convenient. You can use it every day. You don't have to smell the odor. You don't have to taste it. It's non-GMO. It's made in the United States of America. And, this is why we wanted to provide it, because people need it. And it's so powerful of a food. I mean, we go back to the whole thing of when you're in the swamp and you see all that gas being manufactured and all that, that's the same in our body. And we've got bloating and irregularity. And Seth, I can tell you that we have so many people calling us. Some people cry when they call us up because they say, I was going to the bathroom once a week. I was going, once every 2 weeks. And I thought that was normal. And now I go every day and I don't have the bloating. I don't have the gas. I wasn't even going out and living life anymore because I was so miserable and uncomfortable and embarrassed, and now I can live life again. And people that had chronic fatigue, they've got energy back because, again, think about it. If your body is constantly polluted with this toxic material from the funguses and their waste and the viruses in their waste, it's so toxic, and the parasites feeding off of you are not going to have energy. You are going to have chronic fatigue. You're going to have brain fog, and you're going to be sick all the time. And so their immune systems come back, it's stronger. Their skin is healthier. People that had diabetes, even their blood sugars have changed and high blood pressure has gone down. People couldn't get off their statins. Now they're off their statins. They're living a more normal life.
And so this is just kimchi, which is amazing, actually, because it's not some complicated, expensive treatment or some, cutting edge gene therapy. It's actually the inverse of being cutting edge. It's going back to tradition. So you've figured out how to encapsulate kimchi and maintain those probiotics and all the prebiotics and all the things that are living inside of there that then kind of come into your gut, and make it easy. Because look, I've got much more of a broader taste, but even for me, we fresh kimchi, especially when we're doing Asian dishes and stuff, and I can't eat a lot of it. It's not like my favorite thing. But even my dad, who is extremely picky, and he if you say, hey Dad, are you eating your greens? He goes, oh yeah, I had a piece of lettuce on my burger. It's like, oh, okay, great. Right. But even him, he takes, I sent him some kimchi because he was having some gut problems, and he takes Kimchi One every day. Right. And I check in on his dad. You taking your kimchi? And he goes, yep, I take it every day. So it's amazing. I can get a guy like that to get kimchi into his gut to help with things. And so it's pretty incredible, actually. It really is. And so now that we've got we have a coupon code, and so walk people through how to get Kimchi One. What's this look like?
Well, they go to mybrightcore.com and they use Man in America. You're going to have a link below there, I believe, and they'll get up to they'll get 25% off with the code Man in America. Now, what I prefer they do is call in for up to 50% off and free shipping, because being an educator for almost 50 years and helping people with their health, we want you to call in. We want to talk to you. We want you to feel comfortable. We want you to be able to ask questions. And call 888-575-6488. And we'll give you, again, up to 50% off plus free shipping. And the first 100 callers, we're going to throw in something that's a very valuable vitamin D3 plus K2 for your health. And again, call 888-575-6488. And remember that you get up to 50% off and free shipping only when you call, and you'll get that free gift as well. So we want people to be able to talk about their health, ask questions, feel comfortable. This is the right product for you. But I think after hearing everything we've gone through today, you understand how important your gut is. You understand that those microplastics are not just going to leave your body, and they're going to just keep building up inside your body. So now's the time to get Kimchi One and get rid of those microplastics, boost your health, clean your body up, keep your microbiome healthy. And you can call 888-575-6488 and order you some Kimchi One.
Well, there you go. Well, Kim, it's always just lovely talking to you, and your last name Bright, I think, really matches you. So I'm not sure. My last name's Whole House. It's like I feel like I should be living in a cave, which part of me wants to these days. But you always brighten the day when you're on the show. So thank you for being with us
Thank
here today.
you, Seth.
Thank you
Very
for doing what
kind.
you're doing. It's always wonderful speaking with you.
Well, thank you for having me. And I hope we can change some lives out there and give people hope and give them some relief and get them more balance. So that's why we do this. So thank you so